Hello everyone, this is Richard from Modern Healthspan. Today we'll go through a couple of review papers that we found interesting, but first a reminder of the limited period discount of 20% on liposomal NMN and liposomal apigenin. We would like to thank Renew by Science for making this offer available, which you can get with the coupon code 239752. We will have the code in the description as well. Please note that this offer is of limited period and is only valid until 12th November. Here is the first paper, The Effect of Resveratrol on Blood Lipid Profile, a Dose-Response Meta-Analysis of Randomized Controlled Trials. The effects of resveratrol on blood lipids are unclear, as is how these change with dose. So in this paper, the authors looked at randomized controlled trials published before the 30th of June 2022 to try to elucidate these points. What they found was that resveratrol did significantly reduce total cholesterol, triglycerides, and low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, while having no significant impact on high-density lipoprotein cholesterol. They also performed subgroup analysis and found that a duration over 12 weeks and patients with T2DM had a more significant outcome. Although not mentioned here, the dose also impacted the results. The conclusion is that resveratrol may have beneficial effects on TC, TG, and LDL C, and that the dose is an essential factor for LDL C. Here are the trials that met the criteria. 18 of them with a wide range of participant types, duration, doses, and locations. Cochrane Collaboration is the old name for Cochrane, which issues its own review papers. It publishes some of the criteria it used in its review, including a tool to identify risk of bias. The authors used this tool in the evaluation of the quality of the selected papers. Here are the results shown by paper, with the average difference shown with the red line. For total cholesterol, the change was minus 10.28 and had a p-value of less than 0.001. hdl-c did increase by 1.36, but the result was not significant. LDL-c decreased by 5.69 with a p-value of 0.038, and triglycerides went down by 8.56 with a p-value of less than 0.001. They did see that there was considerable differences in the results for LDL-C, and so they performed a subgroup analysis. They divided the studies up based on the dose being more or less than 500 milligrams, the participants having T2DM or NAFLD. For overweight participants, whether they had a stroke or other condition, and the duration of the trial being more or less than 12 weeks. For LDL-C, they did find that the effect was dependent on the dose. In particular, for a dose of over 500 milligrams per day, this had the opposite effect, that of raising LDL-C. We can see that here where I have highlighted the trials that used more than 500 milligrams in red. Similar effects have been seen in BMI and other outcomes, which they point out means that the dose of resveratrol is very important. The authors carried out a check for publication bias using funnel plots. They also used Eagers test, a measure of publication bias where a p-value of less than 0.05 would point to there being such a bias. In the areas that they looked at, only hdl-c had this bias, but they said that this did not affect the outcome. Interesting to see that resveratrol did have positive impact on the LDL-C and triglycerides. Perhaps the switch that happens when the dose is over 500 milligrams is a contributor to the varied results that we see for this molecule. Let's move on to this review of rapamycin and its relationship to hyperfunction theory, written by Dr. Blagosklonny. There have been 3 papers which show that early life treatment with rapamycin is able to extend lifespan in animals. The hyperfunction theory of aging posits that we have a program for our development which runs until we reach maturity. However, there is no off switch, and the program keeps running, leading to the overfunction of some genes, for example mTOR, when they are no longer required. Although the results of early life application of rapamycin are interesting, they led to stunted growth of the animal. One study showed that late life supplementation was not effective. However, this was not the same as has been shown in mice. treating mice with rapamycin from birth had a very similar outcome to having growth hormone knockout mice. The mice were severely undersized but had a longer lifespan. Giving exogenous GH to the GH deficient mice rescued the growth, but at the cost of the lifespan. Dr. Blagosklonny looked at rapamycin treatment at 3 times: during the growth phase, at maturity but before diseases of aging set in, and in late life. As discussed, the first of these cannot be implemented in humans due to the effect of stunting growth. Second would slow aging before diseases had set in. In flies, approach C did not work, but it has been shown to be effective in 20-month-old mice, about equivalent to a 66-year-old person. This may be because of suboptimal dosing in some of the trials. It's also worth noting that rapamycin prevents age-related diseases rather than curing complications from them once they've set in. Based on this, Dr. Blagosklonny's proposed regimen would start after development is complete, for example at 21 years. At the start, dosage would be low to keep side effects low, while slowing aging, and then increase over time to avoid adaptation and maximize therapeutic potential. One final note that Dr. Blagosklonny adds is that he will discuss whether rapamycin should be taken intermittently or chronically in a new paper, which will be really interesting to see when it comes out.